The old wooden floorboards of my farmhouse creaked as I paced anxiously, waiting for them to arrive. My son is bringing home a city girl, I whispered to myself, smoothing my apron for the 10th time. For 30 years, this land had been my sanctuary, my purpose. I raised Tom here, taught him the value of honest work, the beauty of simple things. Now he was bringing home Lauren, a woman who grew up surrounded by skyscrapers and convenience. When their car pulled into the driveway, I took a deep breath and fixed a warm smile on my face. Tom jumped out first, his eyes shining with happiness I hadn't seen in years. Then she stepped out, perfectly styled hair, designer clothes that seemed too pristine for our dusty driveway. But her smile, it seemed genuine. "Mom, this is Lauren," Tom said proudly. She hugged me immediately. "Evelyn, I've heard so much about you. Your farm is absolutely charming, so authentic." There was something in the way she said authentic that made my heart flutter with unease. But I pushed the feeling aside. This was Tom's choice, and I would respect that. Over dinner, Lauren complimented my cooking excessively, asked about family recipes, and seemed interested in farm life. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that her questions weren't coming from genuine curiosity. "Would you like to learn how to make my apple pie?" I offered. "It's Tom's favorite." A shadow crossed her face before her smile returned. "Absolutely. Though I'm more of a takeout girl myself." That night, as I was washing dishes, I overheard them talking on the porch. "Your mom is so traditional," Lauren said, her voice different than it had been at dinner. "Harder. This place is going to need some serious updating before it's livable." "Mom loves this house the way it is," Tom replied, his voice uncertain. "Well, people change, don't they?" Lauren laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. I dropped a plate, and the conversation stopped immediately. When I peered through the window, Lauren was all smiles again, the perfect future daughter-in-law. But I had heard her other voice, the real one. The seeds of doubt were planted. Something didn't feel right, but who would believe me? To Tom I was just his aging mother, set in my ways, while Lauren was his bright future. I went to bed that night with a heaviness in my chest. I couldn't explain. The sound of Lauren's laughter echoed in my mind, that brief moment when her mask had slipped. But that slight chill I felt on our first meeting was just the beginning of a cold winter that would soon freeze my entire world. If my story feels familiar to you, subscribe and like this video. Tomorrow I'll share how this city girl slowly began turning my son against the woman who raised him alone for 20 years. 3 months after meeting Lauren, Tom announced they were getting married. My heart broke a little, not because he was marrying, but because everything was happening so fast. The small, simple ceremony I had always imagined for my son quickly morphed into an extravagant affair planned by Lauren and her parents. "Mom, Lauren wants to have the reception at the Grand Hotel downtown," Tom told me one evening. "But we always talked about having it here at the farm," I said softly. "Under the oak tree where your father proposed to me." Tom's eyes flickered with recognition, then doubt. "Lauren says it's too rustic. Her family has expectations." Rustic. The word stung like a slap. The farm that had sheltered and fed us, the land that held our family memories, reduced to too rustic. I sat alone that night on the porch swing, feeling the distance growing between me and my son. The wedding planning continued without my input. When I offered suggestions, Lauren would smile that perfect smile and say, "That's so sweet, Evelyn, but we've already decided on something else." The loneliness crept in like a fog. Tom began visiting less frequently, always with excuses about wedding preparations or work. When I called, Lauren often answered, explaining that Tom was too busy to talk but would call back later. He rarely did. The night before the wedding, I prepared a special gift, a handmade quilt I'd been working on for months, stitching my love and hopes into every square. "It's a tradition in our family," I explained, as I presented it to them at the rehearsal dinner. "My mother made one for me, and I wanted to continue." "Oh, that's charming," Lauren interrupted, barely glancing at it before handing it to Tom. "Put it in the car, honey." I watched as my labor of love was carelessly tossed into the back seat. Later I overheard Lauren telling her bridesmaids, "Can you believe that old thing? What am I supposed to do with a homemade blanket? It doesn't match our aesthetic at all." They laughed, not realizing I was just around the corner. The tears came hot and fast as I retreated to the bathroom, trying to compose myself. At the wedding, I sat in the front row, smiling through my pain as I watched my son commit his life to a woman who seemed to be pulling him further away from me with each passing day. The reception was elegant and cold, nothing like the warm celebration I had envisioned. I left early, unnoticed in the crowd of Lauren's friends and family. The weeks after the wedding were the loneliest of my life. The big farmhouse echoed with silence. When Tom finally visited, Lauren came too, her eyes scanning the farm with what I now recognized as calculation, not appreciation. "We should talk about your future, Evelyn," she said sweetly, while Tom was out checking the old barn. "This place is too much for you to manage alone. Have you considered assisted living?" I was only 62. The fear of losing not just my son, but my home, my independence, my very identity began to consume me. Each night I prayed for strength, for understanding, for my son to see what I was seeing. But the wool had been pulled firmly over his eyes, and I was beginning to realize that my kindness was being used as a weapon against me. This story is just beginning. Like and subscribe to hear how this city girl's true colors started to show. Can a mother's love survive such betrayal? 6 months into their marriage, Tom and Lauren came for Sunday dinner, a tradition I desperately clung to. As I served my famous pot roast, Lauren picked at it disinterestedly. "Oh, I forgot to mention," she said casually, "Tom and I are going vegan now. But don't worry about it, we already ate." My heart sank. I had spent hours preparing Tom's favorite meal, and no one had thought to tell me. I noticed Tom looking equally surprised. "Since when?" he asked. "We discussed it last week, honey," Lauren replied smoothly. "Remember, after that documentary?" Tom nodded uncertainly, but I knew my son. He loved meat, had never once expressed interest in veganism. I saw the slight confusion in his eyes before he masked it, unwilling to contradict his wife. After dinner, as I was putting away leftovers that would now go to waste, Lauren wandered into the kitchen. "By the way," she said, examining her manicured nails, "we won't be able to make dinner next Sunday, or probably any Sunday for a while." "Oh," I tried to keep my voice steady. "Is everything all right?" "Of course, we're just so busy with our social commitments. You understand," she smiled, that perfect smile that never reached her eyes. "Actually, Tom wanted to tell you himself, but he's such a softie. We think these weekly dinners are a bit excessive. They're holding us back from building our own traditions." I knew with absolute certainty that these weren't Tom's words. My son, who had called me every day after he first moved out, who had never missed a Sunday dinner before Lauren, would never say our time together was excessive. When they left, I hugged Tom tightly. "I love you," I whispered. "Love you too, Mom," he replied, but his eyes darted to Lauren, who was checking her watch impatiently. The next day, I called Tom at work, something I rarely did. "Hey Mom, everything okay?" He sounded concerned. "I just wanted to check about Sunday dinners," I said carefully. "Lauren mentioned you might not be coming anymore." There was a long pause. "Oh yeah, we're just really busy right now." "Was it your idea, Tom?" I asked directly. Another pause. "We decided together," he finally said, but I heard the hesitation. "Listen, Mom, I've got to go. Meeting starting. We'll visit soon, okay?" That evening I received a text message from an unknown number. It was a photo of my handmade wedding quilt, in a donation box at a thrift store. Below it, a message: "Thought you should know where your gift ended up. Lauren was laughing about it at yoga class today. Concerned friend." I sat on my porch swing for hours that night, the phone clutched in my hand, tears streaming down my face. The quilt that had taken me months to create, that held generations of love and tradition, discarded like trash. The next morning I drove to the thrift store and found my quilt, paying $15 to reclaim a piece of my heart. I couldn't tell Tom. He would either not believe me or be hurt knowing what his wife had done. Either way, I would lose. That night I placed the quilt on my bed, running my fingers over the stitches I had sewn with so much hope. It was then that I understood, this wasn't just a thoughtless act. This was deliberate cruelty. A message meant to hurt me, to erase my presence from their lives. I finally saw the truth in her eyes that first day. She wasn't just indifferent to me, she wanted me gone. And in that moment, I realized I was fighting for more than Sunday dinners. I was fighting for my place in my son's life. If you've ever felt your love being used against you, you're not alone. Subscribe now, and give this video a thumbs up to see how deep this betrayal goes. Tomorrow, you'll see how silence can hurt more than words. The weeks stretched into months. My calls to Tom went straight to voicemail. My texts received brief, impersonal replies that felt crafted by someone else. The silence between us grew until it became a physical ache in my chest. I marked my calendar with little red X's, each day without hearing my son's voice. 30 days, 60, 90. When Thanksgiving approached, I called Tom hopefully. I'm making all your favorites, I said to his voicemail. Please come home even just for dessert. Lauren called back instead. We've actually accepted an invitation to my parents' ski lodge for the holiday weekend, she explained, her voice dripping with false regret. Maybe Christmas? Christmas came and went, with a brief, awkward 2-hour visit, where Lauren checked her watch constantly, and Tom seemed like a stranger in his childhood home. They brought me an expensive cashmere sweater. Lovely, but impersonal. Nothing like the thoughtful gifts my son used to give. We can't stay for dinner, Lauren announced after presents were exchanged. We have reservations at Le Chateau. Tom couldn't meet my eyes as they left. I stood in the doorway watching their car disappear, the untouched Christmas ham and homemade pie sitting in my kitchen. That night, I scrolled through Lauren's social media. There were no photos at Le Chateau. Instead, I found pictures of them at a neighborhood potluck at their new house, the dinner they couldn't miss. In one photo, Lauren was laughing with a stylish older woman who was serving food. The caption read, "The only mother figure a girl needs. #blessed. My hands trembled as I put down the phone. In January, I tried a different approach and drove to their new house, a sleek modern place in an upscale neighborhood. I brought fresh-baked cookies and hope. Lauren answered the door, her smile freezing when she saw me. Evelyn, what a surprise. I thought I'd drop by since I haven't heard from Tom in a while, I said, trying to keep my voice light. He's not here, she said quickly, not inviting me in despite the winter chill. Work trip. But as I turned to leave, I heard his laugh from inside the house. Lauren's face reddened slightly before she composed herself. Oh, he must have come home early. Let me see if he's available. She closed the door, leaving me on the porch with my cookies growing cold. 5 long minutes later, Tom appeared, looking uncomfortable. Mom, you should call before coming over, he said, his voice strange and formal. I've been trying to call, I replied softly. You never answer. He glanced over his shoulder, then stepped outside, closing the door behind him. Look, Lauren thinks we think you need to give us some space. This dropping by unannounced feels a bit intrusive. Intrusive. The word pierced my heart. I was his mother, not some unwelcome stranger. I just miss you, I whispered, tears threatening. His face softened momentarily, before hardening again. I know, but we need boundaries. Lauren feels, what about what you feel, Tom? I interrupted, suddenly desperate. These don't sound like your words. His face closed off completely. I need to go back inside. Please respect our wishes, Mom. As he turned to go, I noticed a bruise on his wrist, partially hidden by his sleeve. Tom, what happened to your arm? He pulled his sleeve down quickly. Nothing. Hit it on a cabinet. He went inside without taking the cookies. Driving home, tears blurred my vision. Something was deeply wrong. My son was becoming a stranger, isolated from family and friends. The few mutual acquaintances we had reported they rarely saw him anymore. And that bruise, could Lauren be? No, I couldn't let my mind go there. But the seed of suspicion had been planted. What I feared most was happening. My son was disappearing before my eyes, and I was powerless to stop it. This silent treatment is just the beginning. If you're dealing with a toxic in-law, you're not alone. Subscribe and like to see what happens when the mask starts to slip completely. Tomorrow's chapter will show you just how bold this city girl becomes. The first time Lauren openly challenged me was at my brother Jack's 65th birthday party. I hadn't seen Tom in nearly 4 months, but family gatherings were sacred in our family, and even Lauren couldn't fabricate an excuse to miss this one. I watched them arrive from across the yard, Lauren in a dress that cost more than my monthly pension, Tom following a step behind like a shadow. The confident laughing boy who used to be the life of family gatherings was now quiet, reserved, checking his wife's expression before speaking. Evelyn, Lauren greeted me with an air kiss. This farm setting is so quaint. Though I'm surprised you didn't hire someone to clean up a bit before guests arrived. The farm had been immaculate for days. I'd worked myself to exhaustion preparing for this gathering. But before I could respond, she turned to my niece Sarah. Your blouse is adorable. Is it vintage? Lauren's voice dripped with condescension. Sarah's vintage blouse was new, just not designer. I watched Lauren work the room, subtly undermining me at every turn. Oh, Evelyn insists on making everything from scratch. So old-fashioned, right? And Tom hardly talks about his childhood anymore. I think he's moved beyond all this. Each comment was a paper cut, small but stinging, designed to diminish me in my own family's eyes. But the real confrontation came when Jack asked about my famous strawberry pie. Mom makes the best strawberry pie in the county, Tom said, the first spark of his old self I'd seen all day. She won blue ribbons 3 years running at the state fair. Lauren's laugh cut through the air. Oh honey, you don't need to exaggerate. I'm sure it was just some little local competition. Nothing serious. It was the state championship, I clarified quietly. Governor presented the award. Lauren's eyes narrowed slightly. Well, we've moved on to more sophisticated desserts now. Tom's developed quite the palate since we've been together. Haven't you, honey? He can't even eat store-bought bread anymore. That's not true, Tom said, frowning. I loved Mom's homemade bread growing up. Yes, growing up, Lauren emphasized, patting his hand condescendingly. But we're adults now with adult tastes. She turned to me with false sweetness. No offense, Evelyn. Those simple country recipes served their purpose for a growing boy. The table fell silent. My brother Jack cleared his throat uncomfortably. Speaking of recipes, I said, forcing a smile. Tom, would you help me bring out the desserts? I made your favorite apple dumplings. In the kitchen, finally alone with my son, I touched his arm gently. Tom, is everything okay? You seem different. His eyes darted to the door. Everything's fine, Mom. You know you can tell me if something's wrong. I pressed. Anything. For a moment I saw a flicker of my real son, vulnerable, uncertain. Then Lauren's voice called from the doorway. Need help with those heavy trays, Tom? Your mom shouldn't be making you do manual labor at a party. The moment was shattered. Tom's face closed again as Lauren linked her arm possessively through his. Actually, she continued, we need to leave early. Tom has an important presentation tomorrow. It's Sunday tomorrow, I said, confused. Yes, well, some people work weekends to get ahead, Lauren replied with a tight smile. Something you country folk might not understand. Tom looked at the floor, saying nothing. As they prepared to leave, before dessert was even served, I tried once more. Tom, your uncle misses you. Maybe you could come fishing next weekend like you used to. Before Tom could answer, Lauren laughed. Fishing in those dirty ponds. Tom has a membership at the Oak Ridge Country Club now. We golf with actual business connections, not fish. The contempt in her voice was no longer hidden. My family watched in shock as she practically dragged Tom toward the door. His eyes met mine briefly, and what I saw there broke my heart. Embarrassment, shame, and something else, fear. After they left, Jack put his arm around me. What's happening to that boy? He asked quietly. I shook my head, tears threatening. I don't know, but that woman, she's not who she pretends to be. Little did I know, her public challenge was only the beginning. What she did next would shatter my world completely. Is someone isolating your loved one from family? Subscribe and like right now to see what happened when this controlling woman took her manipulation public. Tomorrow you'll witness the most humiliating night of my life. My 65th birthday should have been a milestone celebration. Instead, it became the night my dignity was stripped away in front of everyone I loved. Lauren had surprisingly offered to host the party at their home, an offer that filled me with both hope and trepidation. Maybe she was extending an olive branch. Maybe things would improve. I spent hours preparing for the evening, having my hair styled professionally, splurging on a new dress that complemented my eyes, the way my late husband always loved. I even bought an expensive bottle of Lauren's favorite wine as a peace offering. When I arrived, their home was filled with people I barely knew, Lauren's friends from the city, colleagues from their work. I spotted only a handful of familiar faces from my side of the family. Tom greeted me with a quick hug, then was pulled away by Lauren to mingle with the important guests. I stood awkwardly near the appetizer table, feeling out of place in what was supposed to be my birthday celebration. Jack and his wife eventually found me, their familiar faces a comfort in the sea of strangers. Some party, Jack muttered. Have you even met these people? Before I could answer, Lauren clinked her glass for attention. The room quieted as she stood on the elegant staircase, the perfect hostess in her designer outfit. Thank you all for coming to celebrate my mother-in-law's birthday, she began, her voice carrying across the room. Evelyn is turning 65 today, though she's been acting like she's 80 for years. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. My face burned. I've prepared a little slideshow I think you'll all enjoy, Lauren continued, gesturing to a large screen that descended from the ceiling. What followed was 20 minutes of excruciating humiliation disguised as humor. Lauren had collected unflattering photos of me, sleeping with my mouth open, caught mid-sneeze, bending over in the garden. Between images, she inserted fun facts about country living that mocked my rural upbringing and values. Evelyn believes the internet is controlled by government spies, she announced to howls of laughter, completely fabricating this claim. She still writes checks at the grocery store and holds up the line. I sat frozen, unable to defend myself as Lauren continued her character assassination. Tom stood nearby, a strained smile on his face, occasionally glancing my way apologetically but doing nothing to stop the spectacle. The final slide was a childhood photo of Tom on the farm, covered in mud. "And this is why we're thankful Tom escaped country life," Lauren declared. "From mud pits to martinis. Talk about an upgrade." The crowd applauded as the presentation ended. My eyes burned with unshed tears, my hands trembling in my lap. Jack's wife squeezed my shoulder supportively. "Time for cake," Lauren announced brightly, as if she hadn't just systematically humiliated me. "Though it's not homemade, Evelyn. We got it from that French bakery downtown, you know, the one with actual trained pastry chefs." As the expensive cake was wheeled out, nothing like the homemade carrot cake Tom had always requested for his birthdays, Lauren handed me a small, elegantly wrapped package. "Open it now," she insisted. Cameras pointed at me. "Everyone wants to see your reaction." Inside was a gift certificate for a complete makeover at an upscale salon, with a note that read, "Time to enter the 21st century. No more country bumpkin." The laughter that followed was deafening. I managed a tight smile, thanking her for the thoughtful gift while dying inside. When Tom finally approached me later, his eyes were apologetic. "Mom, Lauren just has a different sense of humor. She didn't mean anything by it." "Would you have let anyone speak about your wife that way?" I asked quietly. He had no answer. I left early, declining offers from Lauren to stay for the real party now that the formalities are done. In my car parked around the corner from their elegant home, I finally allowed the tears to fall freely. The wine I'd brought as a peace offering sat untouched on the passenger seat. That night, alone in my farmhouse, I stared at my reflection in the bedroom mirror. Was I really so ridiculous, so embarrassingly out of touch? The confident woman who had run a farm alone after her husband died, who had raised a son to be proud of, seemed to be fading before my eyes. I made a promise to myself then, through tears and newly found determination. This public humiliation would not break me. I would not let Lauren erase who I was. What I didn't know then was that Lauren's public display was just a prelude to what she planned next, something that would nearly destroy me completely. If you've ever been publicly humiliated by someone who should have protected you, you're not alone. Subscribe and like to see how I found the strength to fight back. Tomorrow you'll witness the moment I hit rock bottom and the unexpected ally who appeared just when I needed one most. 3 weeks after my birthday humiliation, I received an envelope in the mail, official looking, with the logo of a local real estate company in the corner. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a formal market analysis of my farm, my home for over 40 years. Along with it was a note on Lauren's personal stationery. "Just exploring options for when you're ready to downsize. Tom agrees it's time. We've already spoken with some interested developers." The world tilted beneath my feet. I sank into my kitchen chair, the letter clutched in my shaking hand. They were planning to sell my home, without even consulting me, the home where I'd raised Tom, where his father was buried beneath the old oak tree. I immediately called Tom, panic rising in my throat. "Mom?" He sounded distracted. "I'm heading into a meeting." "Tom, I received a letter about selling the farm," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. A long pause. "Oh, Lauren was going to talk to you about that next weekend. This is my home, Tom. Your father is buried here." Another pause. "Mom, you're getting older. This place is too much for you to manage alone. We're just looking out for your future." "My future," I repeated, incredulous. "Without even asking me what I want, Lauren found a really nice retirement community." Tom continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Very upscale, with activities and care options for when, you know, you need more help. I was only 65, in perfect health, and fully capable of running my farm, as I had been doing successfully for years. Tom, please come over. Let's talk about this in person, I pleaded. I can't today, but Lauren has all the brochures. She's put a lot of work into finding the right place for you. The right place, as if I were a piece of furniture to be relocated. That night, I couldn't sleep. The walls of my beloved farmhouse seemed to be closing in. Would this be taken from me too? First my son, now my home. The next morning I drove to Tom and Lauren's house, determined to confront them both. But only Lauren was home, lounging by their pool in designer sunglasses. Evelyn, she greeted me without warmth. Tom's at the gym. I want to talk about this, I said, holding up the real estate letter. Lauren sighed dramatically, setting aside her magazine. I knew you'd overreact. It's just a preliminary assessment of my home. Without my knowledge or consent, she removed her sunglasses, fixing me with a cold stare. Let's be real, Evelyn. That ramshackle farm is a liability. Tom is concerned about your safety. We both are. If Tom was concerned, he would have talked to me himself. Tom agrees with me completely, Lauren said sharply. He's just too soft to tell you the hard truth. That farm is a money pit, and you're not getting any younger. The land is valuable for development, enough to set you up in a nice assisted living facility. I don't need assisted living, I protested, and that farm is my home. It's also legally mine. John left it to me, not Tom. Something flashed in Lauren's eyes. Well, there are ways around that. Competency hearings, for instance. A man concerned about his elderly mother's ability to care for herself. The threat hung in the air between us. She wouldn't, would she? Tom would never do that to me, I said, but uncertainty crept into my voice. Lauren's smile was predatory. Tom will do what's best for our future. We need that capital for our investment portfolio. He understands that now. I felt sick. This wasn't about my well-being. It was about money. My farm sat on nearly 100 acres of increasingly valuable land, near the expanding city limits. I want to speak to my son, I insisted. He'll call you when he's ready. Lauren replied dismissively, replacing her sunglasses. In the meantime, I've scheduled an open house for next Saturday, just to test the market. You can't do that without my permission. Watch me, she said coldly. Tom has power of attorney. My blood froze. What are you talking about? I never signed anything giving Tom power of attorney. Lauren's smile faltered slightly before she recovered. Well, that's just a matter of time. Tom knows what's best for everyone. I left in a daze, my world collapsing around me. At home, I pulled out legal documents, checking and double-checking. I had never signed over power of attorney. Was Lauren bluffing, or was she planning something more sinister? That night, Tom finally called. Mom, Lauren said, you were upset today. Upset, I nearly shouted. You're trying to sell my home without my consent. We're just exploring options, he said, his voice eerily echoing Lauren's exact words. Tom, I said desperately, please come see me, alone. We need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea right now, he replied mechanically. Lauren thinks you're too emotional about this. Since when does Lauren make all your decisions? I asked, anger finally breaking through my hurt. The line went silent for a long moment. I have to go, he finally said. We'll talk when you're calmer. The call ended, leaving me alone with my fear and grief. For the first time in my life, I felt truly helpless. But sometimes when you've hit rock bottom, God sends an unexpected messenger of truth. Have you ever felt your world collapsing? Subscribe and like to see the unexpected turn this story takes. Tomorrow, discover how a small discovery began to unravel Lauren's web of lies. The open house Lauren had threatened never materialized. Perhaps my legal documents had made her realize she couldn't sell my property without my consent. But the damage to my relationship with Tom seemed irreparable. Our communications were reduced to terse text messages and occasional stilted phone calls that always ended abruptly when Lauren entered the room. Then came a day that changed everything. I was at the local grocery store, mindlessly placing items in my cart when someone called my name. It was Diane, Lauren's former roommate from before she met Tom. We'd met briefly at the wedding. Evelyn? I thought that was you, she said, approaching with a hesitant smile. How are you holding up? The genuine concern in her voice nearly broke me. It had been so long since anyone had asked how I was with actual interest. I'm managing, I replied, forcing a smile. Diane glanced around, then lowered her voice. Look, I've been meaning to reach out to you for months. Do you have time for coffee? There are things you should know about Lauren. 20 minutes later, we sat in a quiet corner of the cafe next door, steam rising from untouched mugs between us. Lauren isn't who she pretends to be, Diane began, her voice low. We were roommates for 2 years, and in that time I watched her systematically manipulate and discard 3 serious boyfriends. Each time, the pattern was the same. I leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. First, she isolates them from family and friends. Then she rewrites their history, making them believe their past was somehow shameful or inadequate compared to the life she offers. Finally, she gains financial control. My hands trembled around my coffee mug. That's exactly what's happening with Tom. Diane nodded grimly. The last boyfriend before Tom, James, had a beautiful relationship with his sister. Lauren couldn't stand it. She manufactured conflicts, twisted conversations, even faked text messages until they barely spoke. When James finally realized what she'd done, Lauren had already drained his savings account and moved on. To my son, I whispered. Lauren targets men with assets or inheritance potential, Diane continued. When she met Tom and learned about your farm, she saw dollar signs. I finished bitterly. There's more, Diane said, pulling out her phone. Lauren didn't grow up wealthy like she claims. She was raised in a small apartment in the Bronx by a single mother. All that talk about her family estate and summer homes, complete fiction. She showed me old social media posts Lauren had forgotten to delete, photos of a much younger Lauren in modest surroundings, nothing like the privileged upbringing she had described to Tom. Why are you telling me this? I asked, though gratitude was already welling in my heart. Diane's eyes clouded with regret. Because I stayed silent too long with James. By the time I tried to warn him, Lauren had already convinced him I was jealous and untrustworthy. I watched him lose everything. His relationship with his sister, his savings, his self-confidence. I can't let that happen to someone else. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small leather-bound journal. Lauren accidentally left this at our apartment when she moved out. I was going to return it, but after reading a few entries, I couldn't give her this weapon back. The journal was Lauren's, filled with cold, calculated entries about her projects, the men she targeted, manipulated, and eventually discarded. She actually writes down her tactics, Diane explained. It's like a playbook for emotional abuse. One entry made my blood run cold. Farm boy Tom finally introduced me to mommy today. Pathetic little homestead, but the land value could be significant with development rights. Phase 1 initiated, charm the old lady while beginning isolation protocol with FB. Standard timeline 6 months to wedding, 1 year to complete family separation, 18 months to financial control. This one's particularly attached to mommy and family traditions, will require extra work. I felt physically ill reading the clinical way Lauren had plotted to destroy my relationship with my son. There were later entries detailing her progress, celebrating each missed family dinner, each unanswered phone call, each moment Tom took her side against me. There's something else you should know, Diane said hesitantly. Lauren has a history of controlling behavior that sometimes becomes physical. Nothing that leaves obvious marks, but the bruise I'd seen on Tom's wrist flashed in my mind. I need to show this to Tom immediately, I said, standing up. Diane caught my arm. Evelyn, be careful. Direct confrontation won't work. Lauren will have already poisoned Tom against any evidence you might present. She'll say I'm lying, that the journal is fake, that we're conspiring against her. I sank back into my chair, the brief flare of hope dimming. Then what can I do? Build a case, Diane advised. Gather more evidence, and most importantly, find opportunities to reconnect with Tom alone. Lauren's control depends on isolation. Any crack in that wall is a threat to her. As we parted, Diane hugged me tightly. You're not crazy, Evelyn. Everything you've felt, everything you've feared, it's real, and you're not alone anymore. Driving home, the journal secure in my purse, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope, small and fragile, but unmistakably there. The mask was beginning to slip. But I knew Lauren was dangerous when cornered, and the real battle was just beginning. The truth always finds a way to the surface. If someone is manipulating your loved one, don't give up hope. Subscribe and like to see how this story unfolds. Tomorrow, discover the unexpected witness who helped me break through to my son. Armed with Diane's revelations and Lauren's damning journal, I knew I needed more evidence before approaching Tom. Lauren had spent months turning him against me. One journal wouldn't be enough to break her spell, especially when she could easily claim it was fabricated. My opportunity came unexpectedly. Tom called on a Tuesday afternoon, his voice strangely hesitant. "Mom, I need to ask a favor." My heart leapt. "Anything, sweetheart. Could I stay at the farm for a few days? Lauren's going to her college reunion, and," he paused, "the house feels empty without her." I kept my voice casual, though inside I was rejoicing. "Of course, your room is always ready for you." 2 days later, Tom arrived with a small duffel bag. He looked thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under his eyes. The confident stride I'd known all his life had been replaced by something more tentative. "The place looks good, Mom," he said, glancing around the farmhouse. "Nothing's changed," I replied, fighting the urge to hug him tightly. "Except I finally fixed that squeaky step you were always complaining about." A ghost of his old smile appeared. "Only took 20 years. We fell into an uneasy rhythm that first day, both wanting to reconnect but separated by months of Lauren's manipulations. I kept things light, making his favorite meals, asking about his work, carefully avoiding any mention of Lauren. On the second evening, we sat on the porch swing as the sun set over the fields, just as we used to do when he was growing up. The familiar creak of the chains, the scent of honeysuckle in the air, the distant lowing of cattle, the essence of home seemed to gradually work its magic on Tom. "Remember when Dad taught us to identify constellations from this very spot?" he asked, suddenly. "Of course," I replied softly. "You were determined to discover a new star and name it after your dog." Tom laughed, a genuine laugh that I hadn't heard in too long. "Rocket Star." I was convinced it would stick. As darkness fell completely, the weight of unspoken words hung between us. "Mom," Tom finally said, his voice cracking slightly, "I think I've made some mistakes." I held my breath, waiting. Lauren isn't always what she seems to be. He stared out at the darkened fields. "Sometimes I wonder if marrying her was." The sudden ring of his phone cut through the moment. Lauren's custom ringtone. Tom flinched visibly before answering, his body language instantly changing, shoulders hunched, voice carefully modulated. "Hey honey, yes, just catching up. No, we haven't discussed that. I know you think it's best, but," his voice dropped to a whisper as he moved away from me, the connection we'd been rebuilding severed in an instant. When he returned, the walls were back up. Whatever he'd been about to confess remained unspoken. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. A silver Mercedes pulled up our gravel driveway, a vehicle that seemed comically out of place against the pastoral backdrop. A distinguished-looking man in his 60s emerged, straightening his expensive suit jacket. "Mrs. Walters," he called from the yard. "I'm Robert Daniels. I need to speak with you about your son." Tom had gone into town for supplies, so I invited Mr. Daniels in, curiosity overcoming my usual caution with strangers. "I apologize for arriving unannounced," he began once seated at my kitchen table, "but I believe we have a mutual concern." "And what would that be?" I asked, placing coffee before him. "Lauren Bishop." His expression darkened. "Or as she was known when she nearly destroyed my son Michael, Lauren Kozlowski." My hands froze around my own coffee cup. "She changed her name several times," Mr. Daniels confirmed. "She creates a new identity for each target." He explained that his son Michael had been engaged to Lauren 3 years ago. She isolated him from family, friends, manipulated him into liquidating his trust fund. When there was nothing left to take, she disappeared. "How did you find me?" I asked, mind reeling. "I've been tracking her movements since she destroyed my son's life. When I discovered she'd married again, I felt obligated to warn the family." He removed a thick folder from his briefcase. "This contains police reports filed by 2 previous boyfriends, financial records showing suspicious transfers, and statements from other families she's targeted." I flipped through the documents with growing horror. Lauren had refined her technique with each relationship, becoming more sophisticated in her manipulations. "There's something else," Mr. Daniels said gravely. "Lauren isn't just after money. She enjoys the process, the breaking down of a person, the severing of family bonds. It's pathological." "Why are you really here?" I asked, sensing there was more. The distinguished man's composure cracked slightly. Because I failed my son. By the time I understood what was happening, Michael was completely under her control. His voice faltered. He attempted suicide after she left him destitute and alone. My hand flew to my mouth in shock. He survived, Mr. Daniels continued. But the psychological damage, he's still recovering. When I saw the announcement of Lauren's marriage to your son, I knew I had to act. I couldn't let another family go through what we did. As we talked, I shared Lauren's journal and the information from Diane. Mr. Daniels nodded grimly. The pattern is identical. The sound of tires on gravel announced Tom's return. Mr. Daniels gathered his documents quickly. I've said enough for now. Your son needs to come to this realization gradually. Pushing too hard will only drive him further into her control. He handed me his card. I'm willing to testify if needed. For your son's sake, and for Michael's. As he departed through the back door, Tom entered from the front, his earlier openness replaced with a wary expression. Who was that? He asked, eyeing the Mercedes driving away. An old friend, I replied carefully. Just checking in. That night, I lay awake, Mr. Daniels' folder hidden beneath my mattress, its contents burning in my mind. I now had witnesses, documentation, patterns of behavior that confirmed my worst fears about Lauren. But the hardest part remained. Helping Tom see the truth without pushing him away forever. Sometimes the most important truths come from unexpected sources. Subscribe and like to see what happens when all the evidence finally comes to light. Tomorrow, witness the dramatic confrontation that changed everything. The final day of Tom's stay arrived too quickly. He seemed torn, part of him clearly wanting to remain in the comfort and safety of his childhood home, another part anxious to return to Lauren, as if fearing the consequences of his absence. I should head back this afternoon, he said over breakfast, checking his phone for the dozenth time that morning. Lauren comes home tonight, I nodded, fighting disappointment. I've enjoyed having you here, Tom. Me too, Mom. His eyes met mine briefly, a flicker of his true self visible. Maybe I could come by more often, help with the heavy chores like I used to. Hope bloomed in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. I'd like that. As Tom packed his bag upstairs, I faced a crucial decision. The evidence against Lauren was substantial, but was now the right time. Mr. Daniels had warned against pushing too hard, too fast. My deliberation was interrupted by the sound of tires on gravel, aggressive, urgent. I looked out the window to see Lauren's luxury SUV skidding to a halt, dust billowing around it. She emerged like a fury, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, but not her rage. Where is he? She demanded, bursting through my front door without knocking. Hello, Lauren, I said calmly, though my heart raced. I thought you were at your reunion. Cut the act, she snapped. I know what you're doing. Trying to poison him against me while I'm gone. Playing the sad abandoned mother. Her voice carried upstairs, where I heard Tom's footsteps pause. Tom needed some time at home, I replied evenly. He called me. Something dangerous flashed across Lauren's face. This isn't his home anymore. We are his family now. Me, not you. A family doesn't isolate someone from those who love them, I said, standing my ground. A family doesn't manipulate and control. Lauren laughed coldly. Is that what you think I'm doing? Tom came to me, Evelyn. He chose me because he wanted to escape this backward, pathetic excuse for a life. She gestured contemptuously around my kitchen. He was suffocating here with you. I heard Tom coming down the stairs slowly, listening. I know about Michael Daniels, I said quietly, and James, and the others. Lauren's composure faltered momentarily, before her mask slipped back into place. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do, Lauren Kozlowski. I emphasized her real name. I know about the name changes, the patterns, the men whose lives you've destroyed. Mom. Tom appeared in the doorway, confusion etched on his face. What's going on? Lauren rushed to him, immediately assuming a victim's posture. Oh honey, I was so worried. Your mother's saying crazy things. I think she might be having some kind of episode. I remained calm. Ask her about Michael Daniels, Tom. Ask her why his father came to see me yesterday. She's making things up, Lauren insisted, clinging to Tom's arm. She can't accept that you have a life separate from her. I told you she was becoming unstable. Tom looked between us, uncertainty plain on his face. There's something you need to see. I said, retrieving the journal and Mr. Daniels' folder from my bedroom. I handed them to Tom. This is Lauren's journal, and this is documentation of what she's done to other men before you. Don't read that garbage, Lauren hissed. It's obviously fabricated. She's trying to come between us. But Tom was already opening the journal, recognizing Lauren's handwriting immediately. His face paled as he read the entry about Farm Boy and the calculated plan to separate him from his family. This can't be real, he whispered. Of course it's not. Lauren tried to snatch it away. She's desperate, Tom. She'll say anything, do anything to keep you under her control. Under her control, Tom repeated slowly, looking up at Lauren with dawning realization. Isn't that what you've been saying about her for months? That she's controlling, manipulative, desperate to keep me from having my own life? Lauren's strategy shifted instantly. Tears filled her eyes. I was just trying to protect you. Your mother has always been possessive. Everyone sees it but you. Everyone, Tom challenged. My friends that you said were using me, my cousins who suddenly weren't good enough for our social circle. The family traditions you called embarrassing? With each word his voice grew stronger. Lauren's tears vanished as quickly as they had appeared. Her voice hardened. Don't be naive, Tom. You were nothing before me, living in your mother's shadow, working at that pathetic local firm. I made you what you are. And what am I now, Lauren? Tom asked quietly. Happy? Because I haven't been happy in a very long time. Her mask slipped completely then. The cold calculation I'd glimpsed beneath her perfect facade emerged fully. You ungrateful bastard, she snarled. After everything I've done, the connections I've made for you, the life I've created, you want to throw it all away for this? She gestured dismissively at me and the farmhouse. Tom straightened to his full height, something resolute settling over him. This is my home. She is my mother. And you, he looked at Lauren as if truly seeing her for the first time. You are not the woman I thought I married. Lauren's laugh was ugly, stripped of its usual practiced charm. Fine, go back to your mommy. But remember our prenup, darling. Your assets are mine now. The investment accounts, the stocks from your grandfather, all gone. I've made sure of that. Tom didn't flinch. Keep it, every penny. It's worth it to be free of you. For the first time, Lauren looked genuinely shocked. Money had always been her leverage, her ultimate control. Without it, she had no power over Tom. This isn't over, she warned, backing toward the door. You'll regret this, both of you. The police might be interested in Mr. Daniels' evidence, I said calmly. Fraud has serious consequences, Lauren, as does emotional abuse. The threat hung in the air between us. Lauren's eyes darted between Tom and me, calculating her options and finding them suddenly limited. You're both pathetic, she spat, storming out the door. As her car sped away, Tom sank into a kitchen chair, the journal still clutched in his hand. I'm so sorry, Mom, he whispered, his voice breaking. I couldn't see what was happening. She made me doubt everything. You, myself, my own memories. I moved to him then, wrapping my arms around my son for the first time in too many months. It's not your fault, Tom. That's what people like Lauren do. They make you question your own reality. As we sat together in the golden afternoon light of the kitchen, where I had raised him, the truth that had been buried beneath Lauren's lies finally emerged into the light. But Lauren's final warning echoed in my mind. This wasn't over yet. A woman like her wouldn't admit defeat so easily. The truth will always come to light, no matter how deep it's buried. Subscribe and like to see what happened when Lauren made her desperate final move. Tomorrow, witness the unexpected consequences of her years of manipulation. Lauren disappeared for 3 days after the confrontation at the farm. Tom moved back home temporarily, beginning the painful process of untangling his life from hers. Each day revealed new discoveries, hidden debts, manipulated communications, friendships that had been systematically destroyed. She changed the passwords on all our joint accounts. Tom said one evening, his voice hollow, "The money's gone. All of it." I squeezed his hand reassuringly. Money can be replaced. You can't. On the 4th day, Lauren's carefully constructed facade began to crumble publicly. It started with a call from Tom's boss. "There's a woman causing a scene in the lobby," he said when Tom answered. "Claiming you stole client information, threatening to go to the board." Tom rushed to his office to find Lauren being escorted out by security, screaming accusations. His colleagues watched in shock. They had only ever seen Lauren's perfectly poised public persona. That afternoon she appeared at the farm, pounding on the door and demanding to speak to Tom. When he refused, she circled the house, peering through windows, calling his name. "You think you can just throw me away?" she shouted from the yard. "I made you. No one wanted you before me." I called the sheriff, who arrived to find Lauren trying to break into the barn. The calm, collected woman who had charmed her way into our lives was gone, replaced by someone wild-eyed and desperate. "Ma'am, you need to leave this property," the sheriff said firmly. "This should be my property." Lauren spat. "All these acres wasted on this old woman when it could be developed. Do you know what this land is worth?" The sheriff looked between Lauren's designer clothes and my simple farm attire, his expression hardening. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time to leave voluntarily." Lauren turned to Tom, who had come outside. "Tell him, Tom. Tell him we had plans for this place. After she was gone, it would have set us up for life." A chill ran through me at the casual way she referred to my eventual removal from the equation. Tom's voice was steady. "I'm filing for divorce, Lauren. It's over." "Divorce?" she laughed, hysterically. "With what money? I've taken everything. You're nothing without me." "I'd rather have nothing than spend another day living a lie," Tom replied. Something dangerous flashed in Lauren's eyes. "If I can't have what's mine, no one will." She stormed to her car, retrieving something from the trunk. When she turned back, she was holding a gasoline can. "Lauren, don't!" Tom shouted, moving toward her. She ignored him, marching toward the barn with determined strides. "Let's see how much this precious farm is worth when it's ashes." The sheriff drew his weapon. "Put that down now, ma'am." Everything happened in a blur after that. Lauren beyond reason, splashing gasoline on the side of the century-old barn. The sheriff calling for backup. Tom rushing forward to stop her. I watched in horror as Lauren pulled a lighter from her pocket. Before she could ignite it, Tom tackled her to the ground. The sheriff was there in an instant, restraining her as she screamed obscenities. "You're under arrest for attempted arson," the sheriff said, cuffing Lauren's wrists behind her back. "You can't arrest me," Lauren shrieked, her perfect hair now wild around her face. "Do you know who I am, who my family is?" "Lady, I don't care if you're the Queen of England," the sheriff replied, unmoved. "Attempting to burn down someone's property is a felony." As the patrol car drove away with Lauren in the back seat, Tom and I stood in stunned silence. The facade was completely shattered now. The sophisticated city woman who had seemed so perfect, so polished, had revealed her true nature for all to see. Word spread quickly in our small community. Friends Tom hadn't heard from in months, those Lauren had systematically alienated, began calling, stopping by, rebuilding the connections she had severed. That evening, as we sat on the porch swing, Tom turned to me with anguished eyes. "How did I not see it, Mom?" Looking back, the signs were everywhere. "People like Lauren are experts at manipulation," I said gently. "They target good people, caring people, because kindness can be exploited." Tom was silent for a long moment. "I keep thinking about what she would have done to you. The retirement home she'd picked out was 3 states away. She talked about having you declared incompetent if you resisted. She had it all planned." I took his hand in mine, feeling its strength returning. "But she failed. Because real love, the kind that built this farm, that raised you, that connects our family, can't be destroyed by someone like Lauren." Lauren's arraignment was scheduled for the following week. The charges were serious. Attempted arson, harassment, trespassing. But there was more. Once her real identity was discovered, previous victims came forward. Michael Daniels filed charges for financial fraud. 2 other men reported similar experiences. The perfect predator was finally exposed, her hunting grounds closed off by her own reckless actions. On the day of her court appearance, I chose not to attend. Tom went, needing to see this chapter of his life properly closed. He returned looking lighter than he had in months. "She tried to claim temporary insanity," he reported. "Said the stress of our relationship problems caused a breakdown." "Did anyone believe her?" I asked. Tom shook his head. "Not after they heard from Michael and the others. The pattern was too clear, too calculated." He sat beside me on the porch. "The judge denied bail. She'll remain in custody until trial." I nodded, feeling no satisfaction, only relief that Lauren could no longer hurt my son or anyone else. "I've been thinking," Tom said hesitantly. "Would you mind if I moved back to the farm, just until I get back on my feet?" Lauren emptied our accounts, maxed out the credit cards. "This will always be your home, Tom," I said, my heart full. "For as long as you need or want it to be." That night, I said an extra prayer of gratitude, not for Lauren's downfall. I took no joy in anyone's suffering, even hers, but for the return of my son, for the breaking of her spell, for the chance to rebuild what she had tried so hard to destroy. The healing was just beginning, but with truth finally in the light, I knew we would find our way forward together. When darkness comes into your life, stand firm in who you are, subscribe, and like to see the final chapter of this journey. Tomorrow, I'll share the most important lessons I learned from nearly losing everything to a master manipulator. A year has passed since the day Lauren was led away in handcuffs, her carefully constructed facade shattered beyond repair. In that time, our lives have transformed in ways I could never have imagined during those dark days when I feared I had lost my son forever. Tom moved back to the farm, initially just to get back on his feet, but soon he rediscovered his love for the land that had shaped his childhood. The corporate job Lauren had pushed him into, where he worked endless hours for connections and status rather than fulfillment, was replaced by a local position that valued his skills without consuming his soul. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. Lauren ultimately accepted a plea deal for multiple charges of fraud and attempted arson. The woman who had planned to control everything, who had systematically worked to erase me from my son's life, now lives within the confines of a women's correctional facility, her freedom as limited as she had tried to make mine. I take no pleasure in her downfall. In quiet moments, I even pray for her healing, for her to find whatever is broken within her that creates the need to destroy others. Hatred and bitterness are poisons I refuse to drink, no matter how justified they might feel. This morning, I stood on my porch watching Tom repair the barn roof, the same barn Lauren had attempted to burn. His laughter carried across the yard as he joked with Jack's son who was helping him. The sound was like music, a reminder of all that was nearly lost but has now been reclaimed. The farm feels alive again. Tom has introduced some new ideas, sustainable practices, a small organic operation that supplies local restaurants. He's breathing fresh life into the legacy his father and I built, honoring our traditions while creating his own. Most precious of all, he's found true love with Sarah, a local girl who grew up just 2 farms over. She's kind, genuine, respectful. Everything Lauren pretended to be but wasn't. When she calls me mom, the word holds only warmth, never manipulation. Last week, Tom and Sarah announced they're expecting a baby in the spring. My first grandchild will be born in this house, continuing a family legacy that Lauren tried so desperately to sever. As I reflect on our journey through darkness back into light, I find myself returning to the same lessons that sustained me through the worst moments. Truth may be temporarily obscured, but it cannot be permanently hidden. Lauren's elaborate web of lies seemed impenetrable for a time, but as with all deception, it could not withstand the test of reality forever. Real love doesn't isolate, it connects. Lauren's love for Tom required cutting off all other attachments. True love enriches all relationships rather than demanding their sacrifice. Trust your intuition. That first flutter of unease I felt when meeting Lauren wasn't unfounded anxiety. It was my heart recognizing something my mind couldn't yet articulate. We sense inauthenticity before we can name it. Forgiveness isn't about excusing harmful actions. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. I've forgiven Lauren not for her benefit, but for mine and Tom's. But perhaps the most important lesson is this: being a mother isn't just about the years spent raising a child, it's a lifetime commitment to loving them through every season, including the winters when they seem most distant. It's having faith that the bonds formed in those early years are strong enough to withstand even the most determined efforts to break them. To every mother who has watched helplessly as someone has come between you and your child, whether a manipulative partner, a controlling friend, or the influence of those who don't have their best interests at heart, I want you to know that hope remains. Keep loving, keep praying, keep believing in the truth of your relationship. And to every person who has fallen under the spell of someone who isolated you from those who truly love you, it's never too late to find your way back home. The people who loved you before the manipulator entered your life will still be there, arms open, when you break free. Today, as I watch my son rebuild his life on the foundation of values and love that no outsider could ultimately destroy, I am filled with profound gratitude. The farm that Lauren coveted, that she schemed to take from us, has become the very place of healing and restoration she never anticipated. Sometimes, God's greatest blessings are disguised as our most painful trials. What Lauren intended for harm has ultimately strengthened our family in ways we could never have imagined. Have you experienced the pain of watching someone you love fall under the influence of a manipulative person, or have you yourself been manipulated and isolated from your loved ones? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be the light that helps someone else find their way back home. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of truth, resilience, and the enduring power of authentic love. And if this story touched your heart or reminded you of someone who needs to hear it, please like and share it with them today. Remember, no mask, no matter how convincing, can permanently conceal the truth. And no manipulator, no matter how skilled, can destroy a bond built on genuine love.